All right. Well, welcome back to Always on the Hunt. I'm your host, Leo Golubitsky, and today we have a special guest, Steve Samson. If you're not familiar with who Steve is an executive with a proven success as a corporate leader, builder of business, and entrepreneur. Currently, Steve leads business development at California-based software developer JetBuilt. In this role, Steve is responsible for cultivating JetBuilt's vendor partnerships with major manufacturers. Before JetBuilt, Steve led the sales for the Americas at Lightware, where he led them to huge growth. Before Lightware, Steve was also the executive director of business development for Crestron, where he led the sales and marketing team for Crestron's digital media business unit, which happened to be the company's largest product launch ever. So, Steve, welcome to Always on the Hunt.
Thank you, Leo. It's my pleasure to be here. I've known you for so long, and what a great podcast you're building, and I'm just so proud to be part of your beginning of this new venture. It's just exciting. Thank you.
Well, I definitely appreciate your support and your friendship and joining me today. So, Steve, why don't we jump in? Tell the people, I read that really short bio, but tell the people more about you and your career and some of the successes that you've experienced.
You bet, Leo. Most of my career, I've been in this great AV industry that we're both focused on. I started as just a teenager building my first AV integration company in the great state of New Jersey, where I now live again. And it was during those years that I learned a lot about being an entrepreneur, building a business. I then moved to Florida, where I grew it even bigger and had a great run working in big mansions, big estates. Right on the water and the ocean, and learning a lot about how to integrate technology together, how to make it work, and most importantly, I learned so much from those great customers. Each of them were superstars in their own way, whether they were a sports celebrity or an actor or a business builder. It was just a great time in my life, and so I've been focused on this industry ever since then. As you've mentioned, working for manufacturers and working on different sides of the ledger, but always focused on AV. It's just been a great ride.
Yeah, and you and I share that background, right? Because that's how I got into the space as an integrator and launched my company. In Cleveland, Ohio, we didn't get the celebrities and sports stars, but still had a great run there as well. So let's jump in. I really want to start off by your time at Crestron, right? Because I think that's one of those, when you look back at your career, I think that's one of the moments that you got to be most proud of, right? It was a huge product launch, right? Changed the industry, changed the whole landscape of the AV space. So let's talk about those days. Tell me, like when you guys started building the digital media product line and you were part of that, take us back to that time.
Yeah, you beat Leo. Well, Crestron is such a great company in this industry and have always been leading by example, growing by leaps and bounds every year over year for as long as they've been around, which I think is more than 30 or 40 years now. And I was there at just such a great time and had the privilege of working with Mr. Feldstein, the great Fred Bargetsky, and my boss at the time, Randy Klein, just one of the all-time greatest businessmen in the world, and certainly in this industry. I learned so much from those three and from that era at Crestron. And being part of that digital media launch was just one of many exercises that we went through together as a company. And boy, that was a great time in my career for sure.
Right. So let's talk about your role. Like, what can you tell people about what you did or how you kind of impacted that product launch and, what you learned from that time period?
Yeah, you bet. Well, digital media at the time was really a sea change for the AV industry. It was at the time when we were converting from these big garden hose sized cables that would deliver, RGB signals and things like this. And newcomers in this industry may never have seen these things, but that was back in the era when CRT projectors were still around, and you had red, green, and blue lenses, and everything was really hard to distribute, hard to manage. And Crestron came up with a strategy using Cat6 cable, Cat5 cable at the time, that made it easy. And really leveraging the ideas that came from the IT industry, and digital media set the standard for the way that things work to this day in terms of video and audio distribution and control. And so, during that era, it was not just that, but learning how to work with the industry, right? Learning how to, convert people's thinking. There were many in those days who you can imagine wanted to stick with the way that they knew,
right.
Almost like the old typewriter, repairman. He didn't know what he didn't know, but we as a group helped the industry evolve to where we are today. And of course, we're seeing great improvements in IT and AV over IP and things like this globally. And that's really, I think those were the beginning movements towards what we're seeing today in the industry.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like the part that a lot of people probably don't remember was the challenge of having all the different formats. You'd have HDMI, you'd have component video, you have analog, you'd have different audios. And the fact that you guys came out with this one product where you could plug everything in and everything would go out in one signal was really mind blowing at the time and a huge difference maker. Let's talk about working at Crestron. Crestron's obviously very well known to be, a great place to work, but also a very demanding culture. How was that for you? Like how did you, obviously their biggest product launch, a lot of demands, a lot of pressure. Let's talk about that.
That's thank you, Leo. I think pressure is sometimes good. We find that some of the greatest things in the world are created by virtue of pressure, and pressure has almost a negative connotation when you think about it or say it like that, but really isn't. I think that what we were all doing together during that era, and I'm sure to this day there, is building a better future by focusing on the needs of the customer, and I'll call it a win-win-win. This idea that it's a win for the company building and selling those products. It's a win for the integrators who are reselling and purveying those products and finding a better way of doing things, a more efficient way of getting to market and delivering technologies. And it's a win for the end user, those who are using the technology every single day. And when you can accomplish that, when you get a win-win-win, then it's almost like magic, because that's what people want. They want to remove all of the friction, and they want to define the better way. And there's an old HP saying that says something like, standard is better than better. And so it's sometimes an exercise in figuring that out, figuring out that there is a better way, as long as it can be a standard. And sometimes the real opportunities are in creating the new standard. And having the bravery and the strength and the fortitude, and then the real plan to bring it into action. And those are many of the things that I learned certainly during my era there at the great Crestron.
Right. All right. Well, let's go into this a little bit more detailed. So, a lot of people know Randy Klein, right? Obviously an industry legend and an amazing business person. But he was also very well known for being demanding, and you were working with him side by side. Tell us about that. Tell us about how you managed him, his expectations, working for him, and in general, not to really single him out, but just talking about like what it's like to work for a demanding boss, right? And performing every day and going in with a good attitude.
Thankfully, I'll tell you, I learned so much from Randy Klein. He's one of the most amazing business people I've ever met. And as I mentioned earlier, I've met so many successful people, billionaires and many millionaires that I counted as friends over the years. But I learned probably most from Randy himself, and it was through that demanding approach. And look, once you understood what it was all about, it wasn't about pressure or about control. It was about finding that win-win-win solution that's sustainable for the long term, for the long haul. And really, I think that's the essence of life, because you can have short-term wins, and those may be good for some,
right,
and maybe not for all. But if you can find the solutions that really resonate, that really make sense, and it almost sounds transactional at first. If I give you this, what do I get back?
Right.
But it's a very powerful exercise in kind of playing out the process and looking to the future and figuring out ways to predict where those successes will be, hedge your bets, and then laser focus on those things. And I learned those sorts of techniques in spades. And those who didn't understand that might have thought it was pressure or something else, but it was never that. It was always
Right.
working for somebody like that is really a privilege. Once you really look at it, if you can see it in real time, you understand that. But you certainly can look back over time and understand that for sure.
Yeah, I reread recently. I think this was in how to win friends and influence people, and I believe it was that book that talked about not every negotiation you got to go in for to try to win it. Like but having a win-win is actually way better. And I think that's an important business lesson for people to learn. Is like, don't try to just always maximize and win your negotiations, but play the long game and build the relationships where you'll gain so much more from it. Okay, so let's jump to let's jump to the next phase. So then you move on to Lightware, right? You go from Crestron to Lightware. Crestron being the industry leader and giant, well known, and Lightware kind of being a little bit of an upstart at the time. Tell us about that. Tell us about your transition of working for, like I said, going from the industry leader to maybe what I would have considered at the time an upstart.
You bet. Well, I'll tell you, that was such another great period of my career working with Lightware and at Lightware. And in that era, I joined a great friend of mine, Jason Torado, who had already been there, and we were part of this kind of existing small group that wasn't focused on Lightware exclusively, and we were part of that transition to creating a U.S. market, North American market that was sustainable. And over a relatively short period of time, over 5 years, made an enormous impact in terms of overall sales, became the largest territory globally, and continuing to grow. It's really a great company based on innovation. And I think very similar to that Crestron story, a company that continues to punch above its weight. And so sometimes that's easy. It's easy to be with a company where the products just work and the technology is already ahead of the curve and ahead of its time. But then you still need to persuade people that it's a safe bet, that it's something that they should be doing and will help their business. And so we learned so much during that period of time about how to not necessarily go right to the integrator, who was very focused on their core existing family of products, but focus on where the real needs were coming from the end users, from the consultants, from the designers and specifiers, those who are looking towards the future. We all now know USB-C is the common connector for all, and in some parts that's by country decree, but that's because we need standards. Back to that old standard is better than better concept, and Lightware saw the future in that, and so we just had a great time taking that small group to a much larger group by figuring out who to talk to and finding those entrepreneurial types who are looking for the better way to do things. And again, looking for that long-term play. And that continues to pay dividends to this day.
Okay. So look, I have a lot of clients that are sometimes on the smaller side, not as well known, obviously not the industry leaders. And they'll tell me, like, we don't want to hire out of, the big names, because the big names sell themselves. And, does the salesperson sell because they're a good salesperson, or are they using the brand name as a crutch? So tell me, like, what are your thoughts on the differences in the skill set that it takes to be part of a smaller, maybe a little bit unknown company versus working for industry leaders?
You bet, Leo. You're right. There is a difference. And I think that sometimes the bigger companies, they have some kind of built-in swagger, and they already have lots of success behind them. And it's sometimes seems easy to kind of ride that existing wave and just kind of catch on. And, I believe in life, you make your own waves. And I think that, every day we all wake up with a new day, a new opportunity, a new way of looking at how things can be built and drive forward. And it's incumbent on those people working at small companies to think in that way, to think out of the box, to not just replicate what's been done before, but to see where the trends are really heading and going. And if you have, a solid company with solid products and a solid view of things with that win-win approach, well, then, it's just a matter of knuckling down and doing the work. And there's no easy way to do that. You have to get up earlier than the next guy. You have to work later than other people sometimes. You still need life-work balance. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that everything takes hard work in this world. Your environment is a merciless reflection of you.
Right.
And you need to kind of drive forward with that never-ending energy and excitement and vigor. And then that becomes infectious all by itself.
Right.
But it takes work and it takes effort to make that happen.
Yeah. There's your always enthusiastic and optimistic Steve that I've come to, learn and obviously love. Some people will say it's easier working for a larger company. Sometimes I think it's harder because there's those growth expectations. First of all, there's more structure, so you have to follow and deal with the bureaucracy and whatever. But then there's also that expectation, hey, we still want to grow. Just because we're the market leader doesn't mean that we're not having growth. And it's hard to kind of squeeze more growth out of already pretty well-established territories. How did, and then on the flip side, it's actually an advantage to go work for maybe a smaller company because there's just so much more room to grow and, less, even a smaller growth is still a bigger impact. How did you view that at both companies? Like, at Crestron, obviously you guys had the biggest product launch and awesome growth phase, but there was a lot of pressure, right, to keep growing revenue and keep getting more and more, versus at Lightware where you guys also experienced great growth. But, if you could talk about which one you felt were, I don't know about harder or easier, but maybe the different challenges in both.
For you, Leo? Well, I think that, there's a simple formula that says if you grow 20% year over year over a 5-year period, you'll double your company size. It's really simple math. So that tends to be kind of the minimum growth expectation that most companies are looking towards if they're really intending to grow and build their business. And sometimes it gets more aggressive than that. To your point, if you're a smaller company and you have much more potential, then maybe it's 40% growth. As you get below that 20% line, it starts to get towards danger zone. You start to become stagnant. So I think if you have that in mind, and then you're measuring your growth as you go, and you're measuring those techniques and methods that are actually bringing you more growth, then you can really focus on that. And I think some of the advantages that big companies have are that they have departments and people and different resources that can be tapped with professionals who know how to work that space. And with that, as you said, comes bureaucracy and other challenges that need to be managed against as well. Whereas in smaller companies, it tends to be more of an entrepreneurial approach where people are kind of rolling up their sleeves and doing what it takes to make things happen and not necessarily leaning on departments or other resources to help them. But in both cases, I think it requires that same sensibility of looking for growth, driving growth, and whether your range is 20% or 40% or 100% growth, it requires the same commitment and focus, and it doesn't happen by itself. Sometimes it feels like that old pump in the country where you go to the pump and you start pumping and you pump and you pump and you think there might be some water, and at some point you wonder if there's any water, but after you pump for a while you realize if you stop, it all goes back down to the bottom again. If you keep on pumping, next thing you know, that water is going to come flowing like anything. But then you can't stop. Right. You can't stop. You have to keep on pumping, and otherwise it all goes back down to the bottom again. And so I use these kind of simple analogies in my own life just to remind me and ground me of those fundamental things that are required to be successful in any venture.
Awesome. Yeah, good advice too. I like the pumping analogy for sure. All right, well, let's jump to what you're doing right now at JetBuilt. Very cool company, cool software. Your role is a little bit different, right? Because it's more focused on vendor relationships than just reaching out to dealers and so forth. So tell us about that. Tell us about the differences in your role and what you guys are up to, and kind of tell the AV industry, what you guys are doing.
You bet. Well, I'm so proud to be part of this great jet-built company based out of California, but we're really a global company. We have people in the UK and Singapore and around this great country, and we all work together in this kind of new virtual way. And so, this may not have been possible so many years ago. Everybody would have been in the same office building out there in beautiful Southern California. But through this, we are building this company so fast. Our founder, Paul Dexter, started the company 10 years ago as a cloud-based platform to assist integrators to build proposals faster. And it's grown into this total project management platform that does so much more than just create proposals. And it's growing like wildfire. And my role is to be responsible for the vendor relationships with manufacturers, distributors, and vendor partners. And through that, I have the opportunity to work with many of the manufacturers that I've known and worked with over the years, and distributors. And it's just a blast because it's that same idea of bringing ideas and concepts together, and together we can move mountains. And the other thing that JetBuilt does that's fairly unique is that we bring together all of the different categories of business into one common platform. So not just the systems integrators who are proposing the solutions and the manufacturers and distributors who are providing the products, but also consultants, designers, specifiers, end users. Education universities are using this platform to create their RFPs, to create the overview for what these solutions can look like. And so, at first it seemed a little bit out of my wheelhouse being a software-based company, but the truth is it comes down to people. It comes down to these relationships. It comes down to people working together to get to a common goal. And what I love about JetBuilt is that it's all about speed, efficiency, accuracy, and it really delivers on that promise. And so, I'm having a blast here.
Awesome. That's great. That's great to hear. And like you're still doing the same thing, back to the win-win-win, trying to figure out the wins for, obviously JetBuilt, but also your clients, the dealers, right, the consultants, the end users, the distributors, everybody on one platform, one page, so things can be more efficient. Right? It's great.
Yeah. You bet.
So let's talk about 2025. We're still early on, still in January, although this will probably air in February, but early enough of the year where we can sit here and still talk about our outlooks and optimism. And, of course, with you, it's always going to be very optimistic. So tell me about what your thoughts on 2025. What are the opportunities? What are the trends? What are you hearing, seeing, and what feedback are you getting from your clients and so forth?
No, you bet. Well, as I said, I talked with many of the manufacturers, and so the overall, concept or the overall feeling is that of ultimate optimism, and that's not just because that's where my point of reference typically comes from, but I hear this pretty consistently from everybody that I speak with. And it's no secret that 2024 was a tough year for this industry and for many people in it. But it also was a great year for people to kind of, tighten their belts and get back to basics and figure out what things they need to do to augment their business, to add services, to recognize, coming trends like hardware as a service, software as a service, cloud-based things like JetBuilt is, as well as, this kind of movement towards more purchasing through distribution as opposed to all manufacturer direct. And that's been kind of slowly but surely transitioning over the years. And I can see that from where I'm sitting today very, very clearly. But in general, I think that the optimism for 2025 is like something I haven't seen in the longest time. We came through 2020 together, and even though that was a tough year, we spoke earlier, Leo, groups found ways to invent themselves in those tough times. Yeah. And this year, I think, is going to be a year where after a tough year last year, we're getting off to a new, fresh start. And, I can talk about China tariffs and other things if you'd like, but this year is going to be strong. I can tell you that. Yeah.
So, we'll definitely get into the challenges and the concerns for 2025, which obviously tariffs are going to be a big one for our industry specifically, and many others. But all right, so let's talk about the specific opportunities. You mentioned a lot of software and services, and it sounds like people are going more and more away from the black boxes, right? And we see that in unified communications, where a lot of it's software codecs versus the old big telepresence systems. So in your background, obviously, you sold a lot of black boxes in your life. So what are your thoughts on where the industry is going as far as being more software and cloud-based, and how do manufacturers obviously replace that revenue, but also how would the dealers and integrators, that's a lot of revenue that people are going to have to make up.
Yeah, that's right, Leo. It's you're right on the money with that one. It used to be that we all sold lots of expensive black boxes, and $20,000 boxes that did line doubling and things like this, and that was a normal fare. But we started seeing things like displays with Netflix and all of the functionality built right into the TV itself. And at the beginning, that was maybe competition to multi-room AV systems or who knows what. But it's the reality that we all are seeing. And as things become more software-based, we all need to adapt to that. And so, at the end of the day, it's always about, that service and the idea that what is the end product goal that customer is looking to achieve. And more and more, we're seeing software at the heart of that.
Right.
Certainly, software is a part of everything that we do in every day, but it's becoming more and more part of that solution that we're delivering together. And with the advent of AI, we'll see that become more dynamic, and we'll see that happen, in real time, where you'll need something and bam, that little application will be built for you, and then you'll use it and you'll build another version of that the next time you need it the next day. So it's here, and it's only going to become more and more powerful. Something like any tool that we need to learn how to use and learn how to harness so that we can, make a better reality around all of us. And then I think that's going to be a big part of 2025 for sure. We saw some of that at CES not too long ago. That was the conversation. How do we together harness this real power to drive business?
Yeah, and integrators and manufacturers, they have to get to the part where we're not selling black boxes anymore. We're selling the experiences, we're selling the solutions, we're selling the service, the support, and figuring that part of it out. Many other industries have figured it out. When we were AV integrators, I always used to compare us to like plumbers. Like, how do plumbers get away with charging full labor, full everything? And of course, it's a little bit different when you got a toilet overflowing versus your speakers not working. But still, I think it's really important for our industry to figure out how do we maximize our selling our labor, selling our expertise, and so forth.
That's right.
All right. So let's talk about the challenges, right? Obviously tariffs is on front and center on everyone's minds. What are your thoughts? How would, if you're a manufacturer, obviously that's going to be a challenge. Like, how do you get around it? How do you work with it? How do you survive? How do you get over it?
I think that, when I have conversations about China tariffs and tariffs on Mexico and who knows what else might happen in the coming days, it feels like there's a conversation, well, there'll be winners and losers. And if your stuff comes from Taiwan, you don't have to worry about it. And I don't think that's totally true. In conversations that I've had with industry leaders, there's this sense that we are all in the same boat together globally. And so, we have this ability to potentially have some chilling effect if chips are hard to come by, or if displays are hard to come by. Well, then you can't sell a bracket to go with that display, for example, right. Or you can't deliver a solution if you can't get those fundamental pieces to the puzzle. But I think that the astute groups out there are kind of playing this forward, and they've seen these kinds of cycles before, and they're preparing their business to, for example, order 6 months in advance and looking for those clues to inform bullish decisions about how to, rise above this. And so there may be winners and losers, but I think that everybody can be a winner if they just figure out where this flow is going and position themselves with some diversity so that they have, a diverse portfolio of offerings and can pivot when they need to. And that's really the entrepreneurial, right. Message is that with every, troubled time, there comes new opportunity.
Yeah.
So with this, I think that if you look at it from the big picture view, it's not an impediment. It's a whole new category of opportunities that those who are really paying attention and who look at it from a problem-solving perspective will come out of the other end stronger than ever before.
Right.
And I'm excited about that.
And I think you bring up two good points. One is that, during times of adversity, people who lean into it and work through it and put their head down and just grind it. And like, I remember when COVID hit, and one of my colleagues, competitors, whatever you want to call them, like posted, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to take the next year off since nobody's hiring anyways, and I'm going to go stay at home with my kids," and blah, which is good for them. I took the time to reach out and build relationships, knowing that maybe I'm not going to, make placements because people weren't hiring, but at least I'll build those relationships. So when we do come back, I'm right there, which obviously paid off for me. But the other part is the look, we're all in it together, right? So like you mentioned, if we're not selling the big displays, then there's no brackets, and then there's no video distribution system. So I feel like as an industry, maybe some people have to think about how we can help each other out and go into projects more of a together, where you don't want the whole project to blow up because the displays are now 25% higher. Do you see people like maybe even, I know some people will, right? Take the time and be like, okay, well, let's just go focus elsewhere, or let's go focus on different markets or whatever. And others will lean into it. How would you recommend, if you were a manufacturer, how would you recommend handling this, and how would you, I guess, guide your team through this?
Yeah, you bet. Well, to your point, Leo, I think that, that there's no sense in waiting. Sometimes there's this sense that, well, we'll wait to see what happens, or we'll wait till the next shoe drops. And it's so hard to predict those things. And I think the waiting is the most dangerous part in things. I think that, the opportunity is in being in the game, in being out there, being part of the process. And back to my earlier point, you make your own waves in this world. And if you can see what are the challenges that are coming, then you can solve for those challenges. And that's where the real value in this world comes from. So whether you're a manufacturer creating those products, or an integrator, designing and purveying and supplying those products, or the consultant who's speccing them, or the end user using them, I think the opportunity is the same. It's a matter of looking at where the industry is moving, and not necessarily bending things to your will in your way, but rather assisting those who are maybe further ahead than you and further along than you in the process. And you see so many of those, great partnerships developing in the world. Honda and Sony just came together. They showed a new car concept at the CES show, and they're bringing the best of both worlds, some of the most reliable cars in the world with some of the best, technology in the world. And together, they're stronger than apart. And so you're seeing some of these things kind of happen in real time, right in front of our own eyes. So I think that those opportunities are out there, and you need to be open, and you need to be in the game. You need to be on the field. You can't be watching the sideline waiting to see what happens, because then you're too late. You've already missed the curve, right? And you're waiting for the next wave, and it may take a long time to even come around. So that's my view of the world that way.
All right. Well, one last topic, because obviously this is a show about recruiting in the AV space. So wanted to pick your brain a little bit about hiring. You were obviously both a candidate, and grew your career in a very, very successful way. And then also you've been in hiring roles where you've hired people. What advice can you give? Let's start with candidates, as far as how do you grow your career? How do you kind of build up? What did you think was most important? The secret of your success, so to speak.
Sure. Well, I think that positivity is always a key to life. My father-in-law always used to say, smile at the world and the world smiles with you. And it's a fairly well-known phrase, but it's a truism, because it's true. If you are a positive person who's always striving to do what's best for your company, and if you're a prospect looking to join a company, then figure out what are the things that you can do, what are your talents that you can bring to bear that can help that company achieve its goals, and not just fundamental goals, but beyond what they could even have thought of themselves. And if you're able to do that, then you become invaluable to any company.
Right.
And do the research, do the homework, look into what they're doing, look into what their competitors are doing, look into where the industry and the world is headed. And if you do that, then you can really, again, kind of laser focus on what's important, and focus on only those things that you can make a difference on today. And if you can do that day after day after day, then you can start to build this kind of momentum, and bring people with you in that process. And that's leadership. Leadership is finding the mountain and saying, we're going to climb that mountain, and then do what it takes to get everybody up and over that mountain safely, not leaving a single person behind.
Right.
And in my mind, that's how you can rise above anybody else, because it's not about those trick questions that recruiters may, or interviewers might ask you.
What is
about authenticity? It's about really being an authentic person, and delivering on the promise.
Yeah. So Steve, let me ask you, what is your spirit animal? No, just kidding. But anyways,
well, that's good. I don't know.
That one of my pet peeve interview questions, but no, but you bring up a good point. Real leadership isn't about just advancing your career, but it's how many people you could pull up with you. And I think that's really where you build that reputation, where people want to come work for you. You get that reputation, then people want to recruit you and hire you. So it's not just about being self-serving, but it's about leading from the front. When you were hiring, and you had obviously many good candidates in front of you, and what was the difference between a good candidate and a great candidate in your eyes?
In my mind, a great candidate is one who just is authentic, and they really, show themselves, and they come forward. And you don't need to be an ace at everything, but you do need to have conviction and tenacity. And I think that's what any employer is looking for when they're looking for somebody to join their team. There's somebody who's going to come in, and if you give them an assignment, they're going to be like a bulldog. Maybe that's a spirit animal, but really just not let go until they get it done. And they're going to find the ways to solve that problem. Nothing is easy in this world. And we all know that, but those who succeed are those who don't, stop at the first roadblock or the first obstacle. And so when I'm hiring candidates or interviewing candidates, I'm always looking for those traits that lead me to believe that they will take that approach to life. Because if they can do that, and if they are doing what's best for the company, first and foremost, then they have the highest likelihood to succeed.
Yeah. Like we talk a lot about the difference between having a candidate that's, the gritty candidate versus the silver spoon, right? Some resumes are perfect. Went to the right college, had the right job, had the right connections, promoted up. Then you see the other candidate that came from maybe underprivileged background, fought for scratch, clawed for everything, and finally got to a good level. And in my mind, 10 out of 10, I take the gritty candidate over the silver spoon. And I think that's what you're talking about. It's like, everyone's going to get knocked down. So how many times are you going to get up, and what's your ability to persevere in challenges?
That's right.
Awesome.
That's absolutely right.
Well, Steve, look, I really appreciate the time. I think we kind of covered a lot of ground here today, and I really appreciated your knowledge and insight and experience, and hopefully our listeners gained a lot of valuable information. Look, if there's anything else that people would like to follow up with us, I'm sure you're open to having people reach out, and definitely get on the Jet Built platform, right?
Anytime.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yep. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn and at Jet Built and in general. And I welcome conversation. And on that point, I love seeing people in person. And even though here we are behind Zoom windows, and that's really the way of the day, that's my one parting word of advice to everyone, is that the real magic happens in person. I took an old friend of mine to lunch yesterday, And we accomplished more in that 1 hour sitting across each other from the diner than in many conversations we had before that one. And so I encourage everyone to not forget that fact and to get out there, to go to shows, go to events, visit your customers, visit your potential employers. You'll see the twinkle in their eyes, and that's where the magic is, right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic in a handshake and some eye contact. It's amazing. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
But and you're right. You got to go out to the trade shows. You got to go out to the events, and you got to go see your customers face to face. Because if you're not, your competitors are. So very good advice. Steve, thanks again for the time. Thanks to all the listeners. If you're still with us this far in, we really appreciate it. Please hit the like, subscribe. We appreciate the 5-star rating too, right? And please join us next time. So with that, have a great week and good luck on your hunt.